I want to focus on the black vote. I want to focus on the black community. What we used to do compared to what we've done, what we're doing, what we intend to do. And I want you to highlight, being a historian that you are, the obvious answer to why the Democrats have had a stranglehold on the black vote since 1964 is obviously because of civil rights legislation that was written into law in 1964 by President Lyndon B. Johnson, even though people from both parties brought it to his desk. But ever since that time, according to reports about Lyndon B. Johnson, we do this and we'll have the Negroes voting for us for the next 200 years. And at a time, it certainly appeared to be that way. And because of that, people have held on to it and used it as a form of cynicism to say the Democratic Party has taken the black vote for granted. So as a result, we ain't going for the okie doke anymore. We're going to change this up. That's what some of the black folks, who clearly are Trump supporters, are now articulating. I want to know, in your estimation, is there truth to that level of thinking, that level of verbiage being thrown out there by those Trump supporters, black and otherwise, and how valid it is in your mind of an argument for them to make against the Democratic Party?
I think there is frustration among African-American people. We ain't going to be on no plantation. Well, what plantation you think you're leaving and going to? If you're on a Democratic plantation, if that's what you conceive it to be, which I don't, what plantation will you now go to? You think you'll be independent? You think voting for Donald Trump or the right wing is something that will serve your interests? There is no evidence of this.
Well, it's now clear that Stephen A. Smith is that evidence that he said didn't exist. Stephen A. seemed close to escaping the plantation, but he was quickly rechained. Silly Stevie, you thought you could break free. How quickly they cucked you and brought you back for reprogramming. It's a shame. It really is a shame. I thought with all of his bravado and big talk that he had a bigger game than that. While it was never clear that he was going to ever vote for Trump, it was obviously clear that he had a lot of questions about Dementia Joe. Remember when he said this?
Ladies and gentlemen, this is a disaster. Somebody needs to tell y'all, so I'm going to tell y'all. And I got liberals working for me who will remain nameless, working on my staff and stuff like that. But without looking at them, I'm going to plead to them to understand where I'm coming from. I want to emphasize that I'm not absolving Trump from anything. I'm not trying to paint him as some good guy who's being victimized. That's not what this is about. What this is about is the end game, and people now willing to see the forest from the trees, understanding the damage that can ultimately be caused. You want Trump gone? Beat him. Beat him. Period. Listen to me right now. To my liberal friends out there, all you're doing is showing that you're scared you can't beat them. When I said on First Take this morning, I'm considering to vote for a third party because that would throw away my vote. But I do mean it when I say this. If I did it, which I won't, but if I did it, you deserve it. You can't beat them. Everything you do shows me you can't beat them. It's a damn shame. It really, really is. It's embarrassing. It's embarrassing.
He clearly spoke his mind, and he actually reiterated what he said there a number of times in other videos. But then all hell broke loose and he was aggressively attacked by the libnuts. But he appeared to be standing strong. He went on the Sean Hannity show, of all places, the Sean Hannity show, and boldly said this.
You said that. First, the question I have is, what was the reaction to that?
Obviously, I took a lot of heat. A lot of people didn't like the fact that I said it. They wished that I had it. And when I give a damn, I'll let you know. I don't care. I'm going to speak my mind. I'm going to speak what I believe to be true.
But recently, shit got seriously real for his masters.
Where was Donald Trump at this point 4 years ago in the polls? He was just at 9% of the vote. So he's seen more than a doubling in his support among African Americans. This margin, which was in the 70s, just 4 years ago. Look at where it is now, 69 minus 22. That puts it in the 40s. My goodness gracious. If this held through the general election, obviously we're still months away, this would be by far the best performance for a Republican candidate among black voters in a generation, 2 generations, probably since 1960 and Richard Nixon against John F. Kennedy. That's how long we're really talking about when we're looking at this margin here. This could be a truly historic margin. It's quite a troubling sign for the Biden campaign.
Yo voy a votar por Donald Trump. Trump, 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 Trump.
A new Fox News poll shows just how much President Biden's support among black voters has fallen since the last election. Take a look at this. In 2020, he enjoyed a dominant 75-point margin, but now that margin has dropped to just 49 points. What are you hearing from voters out there about why this is, and what is the Biden team's plan to try to turn these numbers around?
You know, Wolf, I spoke to black voters earlier this year for some reporting, and their concerns are primarily economic. It's a deep frustration with stagnant wages. It's anxiety about being able to afford a home. They feel as though they keep voting for Democrats and their lives aren't getting any materially better.
Wait, did she just say that black people are upset because their lives haven't gotten materially better voting for Democrats? As if to say that's a bad thing. How dare you black folks want prosperity for your family? You mean you're not happy anymore with the government cheese? What is wrong with y'all Negroes? So they had to begin thinking what Dementia Joe and the plantation owners could do about this. Well, it seems that they concocted some silly idea to get Stephen A. to get his ass back out there to get these black people in line. So Stephen A., fresh off of having his ass handed to him by the black community, was more than happy to oblige. What I'm about to show you is downright embarrassing. Stephen A. went from questioning Dementia Joe to going on the Sean Hannity show to proclaim his disappointment to hosting this incredibly stupid interview. Stephen A. Smith decided to bend the knee and do a collaborative interview with one of the biggest race-baiting grievance merchants on the planet. You won't believe this.
And the reason we're talking politics today stems from reports or polls that appear to show former President Donald Trump actually gaining even more support amongst black voters. And it seems the polling numbers are not lost on the White House, where President Biden will spend this week looking to reverse an erosion of support amongst black voters. Biden plans to give a speech this Sunday at Morehouse College in Atlanta, Georgia, that will aim to increase support among black men, a voting bloc where the president's support has clearly declined. Joining me right now is renowned author, best-selling author, professor, historian, the brilliant, the one and only, Dr. Michael Eric Dyson.
I cannot even believe that Stephen A. Smith lowered himself to do an interview with this guy. This guy has been all over MSNBC for years. He is arguably one of the biggest race-baiting grievance merchants I've ever seen. And yet for some reason, Stephen A. Smith decided to do an interview with this guy. I'm absolutely disgusted.
Well, listen, I needed your guidance and your expertise and your brilliance on this subject because I need you to help me figure a few things out here. There's several polls that definitely show declining support among black voters going from Joe Biden to Donald Trump. And listen, this is where they are right now. Why do you believe that that's the case? First of all, do you believe it's true? And secondly, why would you believe that's the case?
Well, you know, the math ain't mathing, as they say. There's some manipulation statistically with some of these poll numbers. However, the bottom line is there is, I think, disgruntlement among many African-American people about Joe Biden. And there seems to be a corollary attraction and to Donald Trump. He has an appeal. What is that appeal based on? Maybe, you know, some young people say he's got swag. They think he's the kind of person who will go out here and will say what's on his mind without having it filtered through politically correct language. That's one. Number two, you listen to some of the rappers who say that they're attracted to Donald Trump, one of whom says, look, he gave out checks during and the like, not understanding that those monies were released by an act of Congress, not the president, but nonetheless, they associate that with him. And then they think he's got this kind of swagger, he's got this kind of charisma because he's able to, be the kind of person that many of them ideally and fantasize about being.
So it has nothing to do with their lives being better under Donald Trump, but it has everything to do, according to this guy, with him being a figure, someone who they can appeal to because of the rap culture. As we go through this interview, I'm going to let this guy talk as much as possible. I'm going to let you listen to what he has to say. It's unbelievable. He has no clue what people actually want. He's talking from his own perspective, and I can't believe that Stephen A. Smith put him on this show to let him spew the crap that he spews. Some of it is so egregious, I'm going to have to address.
What's on their mind, tell you when to leave and when to come, and keep stepping. More substantively, I think some people are distraught with, President Biden over a couple issues, the Israel and, Palestinian situation.
All right, so I got to stop there. So he thinks that some of the black people out there that are moving towards Trump are moving to Trump because of Biden's situation with Israel. This guy obviously does not have his hand on the pulse of the black community. He never actually, throughout the time of this interview, does he actually speak to what black people really care about.
The war in Gaza. Some of them are quite upset about what they perceive to be President Biden's total capitulation to Israel and not standing up enough for Palestinians. Although one must hasten to add, what do you think will happen with Donald Trump, who has been completely in favor of every action that Israel has taken, versus Joe Biden, who has tried to, apply restraint, or at least get Israel to apply restraint when dealing with Palestine right now?
So of course, Israel is America's ally. Israel is America's friend. This guy is hoping, obviously, and he can't understand why black people don't get it. You shouldn't be supporting Israel. You should be supporting Palestine. You know why he's saying. I can't say it, obviously, because, I don't want the black helicopters to come dropping down and cutting my video here. But you know what he's doing. You know what he's saying. You understand the reason why he is also in favor of basically the United States cutting bait with Israel.
And then I think some people, in regards to their conservative values and beliefs, there's a group of African American people who are not only culturally conservative, some of them are growingly politically conservative, and they find some of the issues that Donald Trump addresses around, say, sexuality, around gender, far more appealing to them than they would perceive liberal cultural values to do. So I think when you put all...
Duh! Of course. How can this guy supposedly be, attached to the black community when he thinks that the stuff that he just mentioned that I'm not allowed to talk about is something that is foreign to him, that he cannot even fathom that black people are basically moving towards Trump because they don't want to deal with all this craziness. You know what's funny to me, and I said this to somebody today, in the history of the world, some of the greatest scholars of all time, Da Vinci, Nietzsche, I mean, put them out to Copernicus, put them all out there, Aristotle. You're telling me it wasn't until 2023 that we discovered that there are more than, one or two genders. You're telling me we just found that out now? It was just discovered in 2023. I'm asking a question. I'm not making a statement. I'm just wondering how all of these famous scholars from decades, centuries, never realized that they were wrong, that a man can also be something else. I'm just dumbfounded. You tell me.
That stuff together, there is, regardless of the degree of mathematical distance between the polling and the actual voting of African American people, there is some erosion of support among Democrats, and there certainly is an uptick of support for Donald Trump and the Republicans.
When you allude to mathematical deviation, educate the viewers out there, educate the listeners out there as to why we should take that seriously, because a lot of times so much is relying upon the polls. We look at the polls leading up to elections, and it gives us an indication. It's not to say it's always right, but it certainly is not always wrong. And in this particular instance, no one would think that Donald Trump, 4 indictments, 91 different counts, civil lawsuits, and hundreds of millions of dollars, wouldn't even be in a position to run for re-election, let alone win it.
That's because you hoped that would be the case. You hoped that these manufactured cases in Miami and in Georgia and New York would stop Donald Trump from being a candidate. I think people would probably say, maybe this guy shouldn't be a candidate if it was real. If it wasn't such a choreographed attempt to take this guy out, if it wasn't just such a fake astroturf kneecapping that was going on, then maybe it would matter. But all it is fodder for you guys, people like this in the media, to pretend to keep saying 91 consecutive felonies and blah, 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 when what it really means, it's just something for you to regurgitate for people who don't like Donald Trump.
But clearly that appears to be the case right now. So when you allude to those mathematical differences, tell me why folks shouldn't dismiss that and say, wait a minute, look at what's happening here. Look at the momentum. We've got two eyes. Right. We see the momentum shifting to some degree, particularly after what you just articulated about this current administration. Why shouldn't folks take that with the seriousness they appear to be taking that with now?
Now, here's what he said that's really interesting to me. They're going to debate the viability of the polls right now, when at the same time they're even having this interview, when they're trying to bring the flock back over, when they're trying to recapture the herd. Obviously, the numbers in these polls are quite relevant. Otherwise, this conversation wouldn't even be happening. You see, that's some subtle manipulation. They're trying to get some people who may watch this who are black to say the numbers aren't exactly real. Meanwhile, they wouldn't even be having this conversation if the numbers weren't real.
Yeah, no, it's a great point. Well, even mathematically and statistically, they ain't calling like 1 million black people, y'all. They're not calling 1 million people, period, when they do these polls. It might be 200 or 300 people. And then the statistical difference could be an uptick of 6 or 7 people in either direction will give you a significant change in the polling numbers.
I'm sorry, I never heard you guys say anything when the polls were in your favor. But now all of a sudden, hey man, it's just 6 or 7 people who picked up the phone, and 6 or 7 people who picked up the phone can really sway the way these numbers go. If you only call 300 people, and you only get 6 additional black people to, say that they're for Trump, you're showing a 20% increase because you got 300 and do the math and blah, blah, blah. It's all bullshit. They're trying now to minimalize the polls while they're having this interview. Understand that the entire time they are trying to now going to say these polls aren't necessarily real, but we need to talk about these polls because we need to get you back in the fold.
So if you're talking, and our brother Michael Harriot, who kind of explained this on Twitter, talking about 6 voters made a difference in terms of registering, a difference in terms of the uptick for Republicans. Now, I understand that and I appreciate that. That's real.
So if you have to attack the polls by saying, it's just 6 black people, that's all it is. It's only 6 that change their mind. Why are you having to defend that? Then it wouldn't be an issue. If you're going to tell me right now that the polls don't make any sense, that it's only been about, this many black people that are flipping. There's only this many black people that are going towards Trump. Why are you having to go so hard to show people that it's not true? It would be insignificant. I don't talk about stuff to me that's insignificant. I talk about things that matter to me. So if it was only 6 people, who are you trying to prove it to that these numbers are insignificant when everybody can absolutely see it? We don't have to wonder about a poll. We can talk to people. We can understand what people are seeing. We can see who's showing up at a rally or walking. These faces weren't there before. So why are you trying to perpetuate that all of a sudden, in 2024, now is the time that we can't take these polls seriously. Just all of a sudden, it's just happened. So then these pollsters should just close their doors and forget about it because none of this stuff even matters. That's what they're trying to say because they are scared to friggin' death. They don't even know what's about to happen. It's actually worse. Otherwise, you wouldn't have to be talking about it. It's that simple. If it was insignificant and it didn't matter, you wouldn't even have to talk about it. But because you are, you're having what's basically called the Streisand effect. You're making people pay more attention to it.
But at the same time, speaking enough to so many other black people and hearing from them, I think it's undeniable that there is great frustration with the Democrats, and there is some appeal to Donald Trump. And as you've already indicated, here's a guy with 4 cases, probably got more. He got more cases than Pabst Blue Ribbon, as they used to say when I was a kid. He's a guy who's facing enormous consequence, potentially, for some misjudgments or criminal activities, and yet black people, a certain amounts of black people, certain segments of black people, certain slices of the voterate feels that he is the appealing candidate. They think that Joe Biden ain't on TV enough, he ain't talking enough, he's not representing his viewpoint enough.
Whoa. There ain't none of us. I don't think there's anybody who thinks that Biden isn't on TV enough. The only people who want Biden on TV would be this guy. His campaign doesn't even want Biden on TV, so I don't know what the hell he's talking about.
Even the people who support Joe Biden, like Plies the Rapper, right, did an interesting video the other day saying, where are you at? You know, we see Donald Trump. Every day he's on TV. Every day he's being talked about because he's got yet another court case or some judge, imposing a fine on him or warning him against speaking. In other words, he's sucking up all of the media oxygen in the room.
Whose fault is that? It's not his fault. You decided, and your people decided they were going to throw big cases against him in Miami. You were going to basically indict him in Georgia. You're going to have this other case here with some other woman that accused him of stuff. You decided to put things on display with the Letitia James thing. Then you brought in the Alvin Bragg. He didn't bring that on. Your people brought that on. Every single one of those cases was brought by a Democrat prosecutor, and the one in New York is being basically argued by a member of the DOJ that was sent to New York because Alvin Bragg wasn't competent enough to bring the case. So what did you think was going to happen when you put all this together? Of course it was going to be more popular. He was going to have the camera and spotlight on him. That's what you wanted until the cases started going south.
And the good things that Joe Biden is doing, he's tweeting about.
And I can tell you for a fact, Joe Biden isn't tweeting about anything. So tell me about the good things he's talking about, because most of America, and I do mean most, but then again, that's if you listen to polls, most of Americans are like, nah, dude, he ain't doing anything good.
Or sending in a way that doesn't get out to the broader audience. So not only are we talking about a shift in sensibility and perception among certain African-American voters being frustrated with Joe Biden for a number of reasons, there is also the fact that the messaging of Donald Trump for free, if you will, but also because of the enormous concentration of media attention upon his various flaws is keeping his name in the print.
Now understand for a second. Dementia Joe is the president of the United States, the #1 figurehead in the world. If he wanted free press, he could literally hold a press conference every single day. If he went up to the podium instead of that crazy woman he's got as his press secretary, and he said, I'm here to take some questions today, and he did that every single day the cameras would be rolling. He's not in the public eye by choice. Don't let that be mistaken. He can have as much free time and as much free press as he wants. They don't want him out there. They make sure he's taken off and not shown to anybody and hidden in Delaware. I don't understand what this guy's saying. The president of the United States is the biggest figurehead in the world. If he wanted press, he'd have press.
That old saying that used to be, hey, ain't no bad publicity. We know there is bad publicity, but when it comes to presidential sweepstakes and this man is still in the running, that calculates, that converts, I should say, in a way that does have a net positive for him.
So, all right, Mr. Dyson or Stephen A., you guys are both on camera talking. Why aren't you asking that question? Why aren't you asking the question, why isn't Dementia Joe on TV every single day fielding questions from reporters? That would be an awesome question for you guys to discuss on your interview here. But you won't.
We have to ask African American voters, you've got to be a bit more sophisticated about this. I think many of us are. And then some have indicated, look, black people don't come out to rallies. They don't do certain kinds of exhibitionist political, if you will, consent or partisanship. What they do is just vote. In some instances, that's true. But at the same time, even among the folk that I travel this country talking to, and you do as well, there is a noticeable uptick in support for Donald Trump that we have to grapple with and take seriously.
It's May 2024 as you're watching this video. Are you telling me May 2024, 6 months from an election, you just now want to take matters seriously? Kind of late to the party, aren't you? Or did you have to wait until the fake polls that really don't matter and are not indicative of what the black support is, that now you feel like you need to speak up about it? I don't know. Sounds like a bunch of bull crap to me.
Recently, I got so much heat. I know a lot, my team and other people don't want me to bring it up. I don't give a damn. I'm going to be who I am. And one of the things that I've religiously stated, I don't support Donald Trump. He's not getting my vote. But one of the things that I wanted to highlight was that, you know what? You're in trouble if you're a Biden supporter. If you're somebody that's planning on voting for Biden, if you're somebody that wants Biden reelected, you cannot just turn a blind eye and a deaf ear to what is transpiring before our very eyes. There are black folks in America who have turned to supporting Donald Trump. That is just a fact. And what I wonder, and I say it, it's not just because of that's a reason to be worried about him returning to the White House. It's also the fact that the level of support that Barack Obama garnered not just once but twice, in terms of the inordinate amount of people emanating from our community willing to go to the polls. That wasn't necessarily the case with Hillary Rodham Clinton, and I certainly have no reason to believe it's going to be the case with Joe Biden in 2024. I think that there's going to be a lack of participation, meaning voters showing up to the polls to vote for him. You're going to see some that just don't show up. That's a concern I have. Is that concern legitimate in your eyes?
That was the longest question I've ever heard in a debate or an interview ever. So he's worried that black people are just going to stay home. They're just not going to vote at all. Well, that's true, and it's been that way one time when Obama ran, but for the most part, that's been the case all along. It's never been a huge black vote in presidential elections. But now they're concerned about it because Dementia Joe is running?
Absolutely. And first of all, let me speak to that. You are a man of tremendous integrity and huge authenticity, and you call it like you see it. And the truth is that there is a troubling phenomenon and trend. There is a problem here, or at least there is a trend that is noticeable that we have to be honest about. We can't stick our heads in the sand and pretend that it's not the case. That's not an endorsement. That's an analysis. I happen to be a Joe Biden supporter, but that doesn't mean I can't see what's going on. That doesn't mean I close my eyes. And you're absolutely right. We have to take this extremely seriously because, as you've so intelligently pointed out, Barack Obama had a kind of inborn and inbred charisma. He had a natural...
Did he really mean inbred? I wouldn't have used the word inbred there.
Advantage. He had house money that he was playing with in a way that neither Hillary Clinton nor Joe Biden possess. And that is the radical and immediate identification of African masses of black people with a candidate like Barack Obama. Now, arguably, Joe Biden has done more specifically for African American people in terms of the effect of the policies. The rate of unemployment is significantly lower. The fact that you've got a black vice president in office and a black woman on the Supreme Court, not only symbolically, but substantively in terms of what he's done with housing and economic inequality, and also for those people who have received who have who have been forgiven of their student loans.
Stop. This guy is talking about government daddy. That's all he's talking about. He's done so much for people who want government daddy. Student loan refunds, you got a black Supreme Court justice, yeah, we got these different policies for government housing, more government cheese, but you're not speaking to black people who want a better life. You just want that plantation to continue to, be prosperous for the white guy and for those black people who don't need that plantation. You're not trying to help other black people get off that plantation. Everything he just said, he hasn't touched down a single economic policy for the masses of black people who don't want to be governed by government daddy.
So when we look across the board, Joe Biden has arguably done even more. And yet the messaging behind that is not equally as powerful. First, because
you're contradicting yourself. Understand what he's saying there. Joe Biden has done so much for black people, they don't even know it. That's really bad. The messaging that Biden is putting out there is not reaching people because, it's messaging. They were getting so much and things were so great under Dementia Joe, you wouldn't have to put out any messaging. We'd already know. What the hell are you talking about? You're blaming the fact that black people are turning to Trump because the Biden campaign has not been able to put out effective messaging so that they know they're being treated better. Who would buy that crap? Why would Stephen A. even put this guy on his show? Stephen A. makes about $12 million a year. It must be very hard for him to sit back, bite his tongue, have his knee bent behind his back, listen to this guy saying that people who get the government cheese don't know how good they got it. That is what he just said.
He doesn't have the inbuilt advantage of a Barack Obama. And secondly, because sometimes Democrats are loath to get out there and brag about what they're doing.
What are you going to brag about? 72% babies from black households are born out of wedlock. 72%. No daddies. Crime, off the chart. Murders, off the chart. Government cheese is flowing pretty good. Food stamps are going pretty good. Free this and free that. But you're not talking about people who want prosperity in their lives. Why? Why are you completely ignoring that?
Have to get out there and brag and tell the people what you're doing. You've got to announce it from your bully pulpit.
What would you have to announce? My God, I know. My wife knows. I don't have to tell her. I don't have to tell my family when they're doing well or when we're doing well. Hey, listen, wife and I are flying to Jamaica for the weekend. You want to get a hold of me, here's the number. Oh, wow, they must be doing well. I don't even have to do any messaging. It's inherent. Hey, listen, let's come over for dinner. Come on over here. Let's do this. Wow, your house looks beautiful. I don't have to message. I'm living it. I don't understand how this guy is talking about messaging when black people are living their lives and you're telling me they just don't know how good they got it. That's embarrassing, Stephen A.
He crisscrosses this nation on his campaign stops to talk about what's going on and to figure out new media, to figure out social media, to figure out the old school stuff.
Oh, you mean like Kathy Hochul from New York saying black people don't know how to use computers? You just said that the Biden administration doesn't know how to use social media. Wow. I told you this was embarrassing. I told you.
And make sure that you're involving the black media in your plans, which has often been a criticism levied by people within the media. So when we put all that stuff together, it is necessary at this point to warn folk, not after it's over. Well, I tell you, I did see this, but I didn't say anything. Say it now. This is the time for us to make acute analysis and serious scrutiny about what's happening. So with the purpose of, arming black people with knowledge that will allow them to vote the right way.
What knowledge? The knowledge they are living every single day. When they go to the gas station, when they go to the grocery store, when they pay rent, if they're paying rent, when they're looking to buy clothing. What don't they know? How is a message from you or Stephen A. or even Dementia Joe going to change what they are actually seeing when they're doing their transactional business at a retail establishment? Oh, it's not really as bad as you think. Well, what are you talking about? It used to cost me this much for groceries. Now it's costing me this much for groceries. But you're telling me Don't worry about it. It's going to get better. We've done so much for you. You just are too stupid to know.
Before I move on to my next question, I want you to take a look at this post from Fox News analyst Josh Kraushaar. That's his name. I want you to take a look at this because I want you to see it, and I want to put it up on the screen here. Mr. Trump and Mr. Biden are essentially tied among 18 to 29-year-olds and Hispanic voters, even though each group gave Mr. Biden more than 60% of their vote in 2020. Mr. Trump also wins more than 20% of black voters, a tally that would be the highest level of black support for any Republican presidential candidate since the enactment of the Civil Rights Act in 1964. One of the things that I'm going to make it a priority to do on this show at least a couple of times a month, if not more, as the election approaches, Dr. Dyson, is I want to focus on the black vote. I want to focus on the black community. What we used to do compared to what we've done, what we're doing, what we intend to do. And I want you to highlight, being a historian that you are, the obvious answer to why the Democrats have had a stranglehold on the black vote since 1964 is obviously because of civil rights legislation that was written into law in 1964 by Lyndon.
That's not it. Yeah, Lyndon Johnson may have put that there in 1964, but that's not why you've had a stranglehold on the black vote. You've had a stranglehold, and I don't mean you personally, but the Democrats have had a stranglehold on the black vote, is because they've been able to keep under wraps. Keep them where they're supposed to be. Use the pastors in these communities. Have you not driven through an inner city in the last 20 or 30 years? There are places back in my hometown where I can go back near my hometown and drive through, and it's like a time warp. It never changed. Things were ghettos then, things are ghettos now. There's been no progress from the Progressive Party. There's been no progress. You have kept people imprisoned, i.e. on the plantation, for decades. It was intentional, it's been willful, and it's worked for a long time until one guy came along and said, "What do you got to lose?" And now people are saying, I got a lot to lose. I absolutely have a lot to lose. So listen to this answer.
President Lyndon B. Johnson, even though people from both parties brought it to his desk. But ever since that time, according to reports about Lyndon B. Johnson, we do this and we'll have the Negroes voting for us for the next 200 years.
And he was right.
And at a time, it certainly appeared to be that way. And because of that, people have held on to it and used it as a form of cynicism to say the Democratic Party has taken the black vote for granted. So as a result, we ain't going for the okie doke anymore. We're going to change this up. That's what some of the black folks,
I just wish more would say, let's change it up. I wish it wasn't some. I wish more and more said, we're not going to take this anymore.
Who clearly are Trump supporters are now articulating.
So understand what he said right there. It's Trump supporters who articulate, we're not going to take this anymore. Why isn't that a message that is amplified in the black community as a whole? Not just Trump supporters, but why aren't people screaming from the rooftops, hey, you should want more. We don't need this 1964 crap anymore. That was, 60 years ago. Right now, you should be wanting more prosperity. You should want more of the apple. You should want to do things that increase wealth for you and your family, instead of lamenting that somebody else is actually saying it.
I want to know, in your estimation, is there truth to that level of thinking, that level of verbiage being thrown out there by those Trump supporters, black and otherwise, and how valid it is in your mind of an argument for them to make against the Democratic Party?
Yeah, look. If you're suffering in a certain way, and African-American people across the board are.
Wrong. He just said African-American people, black people across the board are suffering. Across the board. Everybody. Every NBA player, Stephen A. Smith, myself, every baseball player, every hockey player, any tennis player, any golf player, any businessman. Across the board, you're all suffering. You don't know it. I'm going to tell you because I'm a race baiter, but you're all suffering, but you don't know it. Right off the bat, the first thing he said was an absolute lie, and Stephen A. Smith, who I know knows better, didn't call the guy on it.
As the brothers in the street say, irregardless of your party, whether you're Democrat or Republican. There's no question about that. However, if you say under the Democrats you are frustrated and flustered because certain issues are not being taken seriously, or you don't think you're being heard, or you think you're being taken for granted, you know, it's a kind of Bobby Womack approach to this whole thing. If you think you're lonely now, wait until tonight, girl.
So what he just said there, using a Bobby Womack song, he was an R&B artist from a long time ago, you know, if you think you're lonely now, wait until tonight. Meaning, if you look at Trump and you decide to go with Trump, oh boy, you think it's bad now. You ain't seen nothing yet. You don't even know how bad it's going to get. This guy Trump is so much worse. Your lives are going to be so much worse because you're going to go with this guy. You ain't seen nothing yet. You are going to be so lonely tonight. You're going to be lonely and out in the cold with nobody there to help you. That's what this guy just peddled. This is what this guy just said on Stephen A. Smith's show. Stephen A. Smith, as I said, makes $10-12 million a year. And he just sat there and let some guy saying all black people across the board are suffering. And if you think it's bad now, you ain't seen nothing yet. Well, I kind of remember, other than the mean tweets, paying $1.85 for gas. I actually remember that. I actually remember interest rates being in the low 2s. I actually remember that. I lived that. I bought property. Mortgage rates were lower. You could buy property and make money. Rent was lower. My tenants could afford to pay the rent. What do you mean? If you think it's bad now, wait till you see what happens. I know there weren't newcomers, millions of them crossing the border and having to pay for them to be flown and housed and everything else. What's going to get worse under Trump? What possibly could get worse under Trump? I told you this was an embarrassing interview for Stephen A. Smith.
Okay, so the thing is that if you think you're frustrated and flustered under the Democrats, the reason the Republicans have not garnered more of the African American vote, and I'll tell you, it's easy. It would be easy for them to do so because there is agreement outside of what I believe. I happen to be a progressive, liberal thinker within African American culture. The masses of black people would disagree with me on certain issues in terms of LGBTQA, QI, of transgender and the like, and so on. I understand.
Of course we would. Of course the norm would be against what you just said. I can't even report on it. I can't say it because of, up there. But of course we're not for that.
I don't lie to myself about that. However, what I say is, the masses of black people who happen to be conservative would find it more easy to vote Republican if the Republicans weren't so repugnant and repulsive in some of their explicit racist manipulations or their implicitly racist policies or outlooks.
And Stephen A. Smith was quiet. Stephen A. Smith is being paid $10 to $12 million by a white man. Don't make any bones about it. The CEO of Disney is a white guy. Disney owns ABC and ESPN. He's being paid by a white man. The repugnant, oppressive, repulsive stuff that he just said is a crock. Every single NFL player, every single NBA player, every single, I could just go on and on. They're all being paid by white people. There might be one black owner, Magic Johnson, I think, owns something. But for the most part, he again is just spewing BS, absolute BS.
So in other words, if they weren't so on retaliating against the fragile gains of African American people and could find a way to make concessions in their own ideological tent, a lot more black people would be gathered under there.
You know what it is you people are trying to keep black people from understanding what's available to them. See, the biggest problem with people like him is that they think they need to keep you under wraps. Because the more you know and the more you educate yourself, if you are a black person, the more you know what's available to you. Instead of eating government cheese, you're buying your own. What is wrong with that? Instead of an Obama phone, you're buying your own cell phone. Instead of an Obama cable service, if you can use a computer, because some of them think you can't even use a computer, but if you can use a computer, you can buy your own broadband. Why aren't they promoting that? Why is Stephen A. Smith allowing this guy to say this crap on the air? I'll tell you why. Like I said, the title of this video, he bent the knee.
Just because you're hurting in your left pinky doesn't mean that I'm going to go to somebody who's going to hurt the other three fingers. You want to hurt less, not more. And under Republican ideology and practices, look at the gerrymandering going on in state legislatures. Look at the drawing of voting maps that are dissipating the concentrated effect of black voting districts. The Supreme Court just ruled a couple of days ago saying, I think it was in Louisiana or somewhere, that the attempt of the state legislatures and the courts to gerrymander against African American people and to draw maps that would disfavor them is constitutionally invalid. So this is the effect of the Republicans. They want to gain every advantage possible, legally or not, constitutionally or not.
Oh, so they want to break the law. So they're going to do stuff constitutionally correct or not. Either way, they're going to break the law to hurt black people. That's what this guy just said.
And I think that all of this discourse among Republicans about steal the vote and look at what happened, the truth is that there's very little of stealing the vote among Democrats. There's a little voting irregularity.
And I can't even respond to that, correct? You know why. But it's okay for him to say what he just said, but those of us who know otherwise can't even respond to that.
What we can point to is the sheer manipulation of ideologues within the right wing or the Republican Party. Having said that, I think there is frustration among African American people. We ain't gonna be on no plantation. Well, what plantation you think you're leaving and going to? If you're on a Democratic plantation, if that's what you conceive it to be, which I don't, what plantation will you now go to? You think you'll be independent? You think voting for Donald Trump or the right wing is something that will serve your interests? There is no evidence of this.
I could probably cut this interview right now, but because that's how bad it is. He's now comparing one plantation to another. Hey, listen, if you leave here, what do you think it's going to be better on over there? You're just going to another plantation. You're not going to be free. You're still going to be on a plantation, so you might as well stay on this plantation. His words, not mine. The Republicans have a different plantation, I guess, where the grass is a little bit cut better, whereas we got the weeds in the inner city, but their plantation is much worse. And Stephen A., again, I'm going to say it, allowed him to continue with this. I don't understand how he let this continue, but he let it continue and he didn't say anything. Maybe that's his way of saying, all right, I had to bend the knee. You wanted me to bring this guy on. You wanted me to do this interview. Okay, I'm going to bring him on and let him talk his crap and let him spew as much BS as he wants to. And you're going to embarrass people. You're going to basically push more people to Trump. I think the more people who hear this interview, and I hope a lot of people share this interview. I know it's a long video. But the more people who hear what this idiot just said, I think they're going to push more people to Trump.
And I think we have to suggest to African American people, yes, we've got to sometimes bite the bullet. Yes, we've got to sometimes look the bully in the face and say this is true and not true. But we don't gain when we capitulate to interests that have evidently undermined our community and not shown much interest otherwise.
Now, if Stephen A. Smith was being a true interview host, he would ask him, what are you talking about? Can you give me specific instances of this deliberate and intentional undermining that have occurred in, say, I don't know, the last 20 years? I mean, you understand we had a black president that served 2 terms. So did it go before him, stop, and then continue? Or has it always been this way? Because to me, if he spent 8 years in the White House, none of this stuff should be there anymore. So you're still having your grievance problems. You had the president in office that you wanted, then everything should be hunky-dory at this point, right? Right.
Yes, it's hard, perhaps, for some people to vote Democratic and to be in that group, but it is far more difficult and far more paralyzing to make the choice to swing in the other direction.
So you're paralyzed. If you vote for Trump, your mind, your physicality, everything about you is paralyzed. He keeps insulting people. He keeps insulting the intelligence of black people who want something different. What the hell is wrong with this guy?
The other thing that I pointed out, Dr. Dyson, is this, and I took a lot of heat for this, but again, I don't give a damn. I stand on it.
No, that's not true. You're not standing on what you said. You are completely bending the knee and capitulating. Don't try to fool us, Stephen A. You wouldn't have this idiot on an interview on your show if you truly believed what you just said.
I think about Trump and the lawfare that has been engaged against him. What I'm saying is I'm not trying to act as if the man is guilty or innocent of anything. The courts will determine that and we'll go with it from there. What I'm saying is it's not stopping him from being away from the camera. It's not stopping him from playing the role of victim. It's not stopping.
Whoa. Playing the role of victim? I'm sorry. If somebody brings 91 charges against you in 4 different jurisdictions, you're pretty much a victim. It's pretty much the definition of being a victim.
Him from generating campaign dollars. And on top of it all, it hasn't stopped him from being the GOP nominee and the man in line to return to the presidency unless Biden is able to beat him.
So was it supposed to prevent him from being president? Because I'm just reading between the lines of what you said. You just said it hasn't stopped him yet. So are you saying that this was hopefully to stop him? Because I've heard that quite a bit too.
My point is, I don't think that they've taken that into enough consideration, and you're looking for the courts to come to the rescue instead of you finding a way to beat him yourself. I don't know how much clearer I can be in stating that. Help me out here. Help me out with that message.
You're absolutely right. And then I was thinking when you were talking, playing a little acronym game here, he is a G to many of these people, right? Not the GOP, just the G, just in terms of street discourse. And OP, you're down with OP, right? So there is some grudging recognition among certain African-American people like, damn, I don't care what you say about Donald Trump. I don't dig him. I ain't trying to vote for him. But, dog, you got to admit, he just don't care. He going to say what he believes. He going to tell you how he thinks it ought to be. And he's going to move forward. There is something to many people that's refreshing about the departure from a political discourse that is so riddled with duplicity, with people not telling the truth, with people not coming out and saying what they believe. Now, so let's be honest about that.
But you're not being honest about that. You see, the entire interview, everyone could see what you've been saying over the last 30 or 40 minutes. You haven't brought up one economic policy. You haven't mentioned anything that really affects the pocketbook of Black Americans. You think it's all about street cred. You think it's all about the rap culture. But you don't want to address what stares people every day in the face when they go to any real retail establishment. If they're buying a house, if they're renting a house, if they're buying a car, if they're getting a loan on a car, you haven't explained any of that in terms of how it's better for the American people, never mind just Black people. You haven't explained any of that. Why is it more for gas? Why is it more for groceries? You haven't explained any of that. You just expect people his only appeal is to the rap culture. You're completely wrong and you're lying and you're basically underestimating the intelligence of the Black voter.
Having said that, you're absolutely right too, that people, at the end of the day, regardless of the charges he's confronting, regardless of the cases he's got, he is out there every day on Truth Social and whatever other platform he has, in the press, when the judges are not trying to censor him correctly. In terms of putting a...
so he likes the gag order. You understand? Censor him correctly. I want him to be gagged. So this guy here, we understand what his motivation is.
Gag order on him when he keeps on talking and offending. Now, it's reprehensible in terms of the political substance and the moral substance of what he's doing. But at the...
To who? Stephen A., there was your opening. I would love to interview some of these people, and I would say to them, stop. Who is it reprehensible to? Who is it offensive to? Let them answer that question.
Same time, he gains eyeballs and earlobes. People hear what he's talking about, and they are forced to assess the veracity or not, the legitimacy or not, the authenticity or not. And so at the end of the day, that is a kind of bullheaded determination to be heard at all costs.
So, why isn't Dementia Joe doing the same thing? Why is he not out there? There is nothing precluding him from gaining those same eyeballs. Notice Stephen A. Smith didn't bring that up either. Hey, Mr. Dyson, I understand. So Trump is out there every single day talking in front, before court, at lunchtime, after court, doing rallies. He's getting eyeballs everywhere. Why isn't Joe doing that? What is preventing Dementia Joe from getting out there in front of people every single day? Nothing. He could walk to the podium every single day and talk to the American people. He's got the Roosevelt Room. He's got the big desk in the Oval Office. He could have a press conference anytime he wants, and every single network would cover it. Do you think we're stupid that we don't know that? Do you think that people somehow forget that he has the bully pulpit of being able to flip a switch and get on camera and go, you know what? We're going to talk about something today. We're going to talk about X, Y, or Z. Why isn't he doing it? Stop lying to everybody. Stop. Just stop it.
That is attractive to certain voters who say, I'm tired of the BS I get coming out of these politicians' mouths. They're lying left and right and left. But here's a guy who's going to tell it like it is. I happen to believe that is destructive for the country. I happen to believe.
See how you slid that in there? I use my board here to stop it, because otherwise these guys just say this stuff. It's not even Freudian. It's subliminal to try and influence people. And they just spit this stuff out there. It's horrible for the country. Whoa. Why is it horrible for the country that Donald Trump talks? Nobody ever asks these questions. Nobody ever thinks to stop people and say, wait a second, what did you just say?
That he has shredded any ounce of consideration for the other side and any ounce of political convention that suggests we have decorum and civility in a way. However, in these trench battles, it is very vicious out here, and Donald Trump is throwing mud in the face, sand in the face, using every advantage he has, name calling and the like. And we'll see what happens when this upcoming debate in June, where Donald Trump faces off squarely against President Biden.
It's not squarely. It's on CNN. You got Dana Bash. You've got fake Jake Tapper. You've got no microphones being muted. You got nothing else. Nobody in the audience. Hey, that's fair. That's what the American people want. Sure.
And see what the consequences will be. But we cannot underestimate the various forces of appeal out here that militate against the interests of African American people that they may be voting for. And we can't pretend that.
What are those interests that people would be voting against the interest of black people? Again, just spewing things out, just trying to point it out to you so you can see how the BS is perpetuated.
Just because we think it's silly or crazy or dumb or unintelligent or counterproductive or destructive to our interests, that it's not happening. We have to open our eyes and then try to strategize as a result of that.
When we talk about polls, you have some people out there who are talking about it, especially somebody like my buddy Roland Martin, who would say, you know what, there are black polls, there are white polls, and there are black polls. Do you draw a distinction with that? Do you agree with him on that these polls, because you alluded to its potential inaccuracies, and they haven't talked to every black person, and there indeed is a difference between white polls and black polls that actually exist?
Oh, so now polls are racist. That's what you're saying. There's a difference between black polls and white polls. I didn't know there was such a thing.
Out there where there's palpable evidence to show that dichotomy that exists. Do you agree with Roland Martin on that?
Oh, absolutely. I agree with nearly everything Roland Martin says.
But I absolutely. Anything Roland Martin says, I agree with everything. Everything he says, I agree with. Wow. Come on, Stephen A. You could have done better. Much better, dude.
But it is, I agree
so
with Stephen A. Smith.
Oh, so Stephen A. said, I agree with everything he says as well. Okay. That's why you're doing this interview then.
But as it with Stephen A. Smith, I mean, smart black people, period. But smart black people, I take them seriously. So.
Okay, so I guess he takes me seriously because I consider myself smart. Thank you for the compliment there.
So you and he, certainly I take seriously. But yes, I mean, and look, Martin Luther King Jr. used to joke about this. It was common in the black community. When the census taker came, the reason we didn't get an accurate count of black people, Dr. King said, because they thought it was the bill collector.
That's not racist. That's not racist at all, is it? So are you saying that it's the same way 60 years later, that people don't take polls and don't respond because they think they're bill collectors? Is that what you think that black people are? Are you saying in 2024 that the same way, the same lifestyle that black people led in 1968 has not changed in nearly 60 years? Is that what you're saying? Stephen A., why didn't you call him out on that? You know, says the fact that you make $10, $12 million a year, which I am happy for you. See, that's just the other side of the coin. I am happy that you make that kind of money. I am happy that anybody makes that kind of money and prospers. It's fantastic. But to pretend that people are still stuck in 1968, that's insulting.
So because they thought it was the bill collector, they ain't answered the door, and we don't get our census counted. That's still a problem in many instances. But
so you're having this interview, and instead of telling people, hey, I'm not sure you've seen a calendar in 56 years, but it's not 1968. Everyone who knocks on your door or calls you isn't a bill collector. I think they'd be surprised for you to tell them that you should maybe, answer the damn phone.
the point is, even if half the poll is right, we in trouble. Even if you cut down 50% of it.
Yeah, he finally said something truthful. If the numbers are even half as bad as they are for Dementia Joe, yes, the Democrats are in big poop trouble.
Be in trouble, and we should take it as a warning sign, a volley, if you will, across the bow, politically speaking, that we got to do something. We got to get on our P's and Q's. I know Roland, I know you, and I know the most intelligent observers of our community have to, are often, sounding the alarm. I don't care what them polls are saying. Even if we say half of it is right, half of it is wrong, or it's off by so many percentage points, and it therefore doesn't truly represent. Ain't no problem, ain't no harm in overdoing it. So the point is that we cannot let our foot off the gas. We have to assume we have a formidable opponent, because we do. We have to assume that there is a bleeding off, a leakage of support formerly accumulated within African American culture, and there is. And so therefore, despite the fact that those polls, I think, are off, and that there's a differential accorded to any objective person dealing with evidence and empirical
Dude, get to your point.
verification of a fact, that there's a difference between white polls and black polls, that's true. But we got to act like we are in trouble and the house is on fire. And what is we gonna do?
I can't tell you what we's gonna do, but I'm gonna vote for Donald Trump. How about that?
That's where we are, and we have to be motivated to address that issue.
How disappointed, I'm going to use the word disappointment, if not flat out fearful, even though I would almost never associate that last word with you. How fearful are you about the Democratic Party not having a bullpen, not having anybody lined up, knowing this man has been in this picture, on this scene, this political scene, for at least 8 years and counting, and we find...
Did he just insult Kamala Harris? I'm pretty sure Kamala Harris would be insulted by what he just said, because we don't have anybody on the bench. There's nobody else there. Hello, I'm the vice president. Cackles, she's the vice president, and you're like, man, I'm disappointed we ain't got nobody on the bench. I'm pretty sure she'd be real upset. I mean, you're right. She's not formidable whatsoever, but the fact remains, you just insulted a black woman.
Find ourselves relying on a soon-to-be 82-year-old incumbent to give us 4 more years. What does that say to you about the party that you pride yourself in being a part of in this day and age?
Yes, sir. Well, first of all, I'm praying for his health. That's number one.
Right.
As a Baptist preacher, Jesus, please help me out. So that's number one. But number two, more seriously, you're right. We do have to develop a bench. We have to generate. And here's the thing. Here's what I know about history, though, is that there's always a ram in the bush somewhere, that there's always somebody ready to step up that we don't even know their name. There are very articulate, insightful, conscientious political figures. Some would say a Hakeem Jeffries. Some would say a Jasmine Crockett. Some would say...
Did he just say Jasmine Crockett? Did he just say that Jasmine Crockett is a formidable person to take the reins in the Democrat Party from a black perspective? Please tell me he just didn't say that. Stephen A. Smith, did you not vet this guy before you had this interview? You had to know he was a clown. You had to figure out from things he's said, he's got a massive amount of stuff out there that you could view. You didn't know that this guy was an absolute clown? He just said Jasmine Crockett is someone to be on the bench for the Democrat Party. Let me just say this. Let me be the first person to say it. Please, please put Jasmine Crockett as one of the bright shining stars of the Democrat Party. Please put her up for higher office. I beg of you to make sure that happens. Oh my God, Jasmine Crockett. It was bad enough when he mentioned Hakeem Jeffrey, but then he went and said Jasmine Crockett. That's all you need to know. I'm sorry if you thought I wasted your time, but he just exposed himself as the idiot that he is.
Younger people, out of Congress, Jamal Bowman and the like, who are seriously committed.
Jamal Bowman, the guy who pulled the fire alarm at the House of Congress, the guy who's been censured for doing an act like that, the guy who's basically one of the most anti-American people in Congress, along with the squad people. That's another one of your shining stars. Whew, man, you're way off, dude.
Committed to making a difference. There are white and black and Latino politicians who are quite comfortable in trying to forge connections with people across the aisle, but then keeping their eyes on the prize.
Stephen A., he didn't ask. His words, what's the prize? Keeping their eye on the prize. What's that prize?
So that there are people who will certainly emerge because necessity is the mother of invention. However, it is true that we must be deeply and profoundly committed and invested in the process of developing a visibly ready bench of figures to step up into not only the spotlight, more importantly, onto the stage to do the work that is necessary to encourage political progress for African Americans and Latinos and poor white folk and Asian brothers and sisters and so on, who are able to articulate the ideals of the American democracy in ways that are appealing and refreshing, willing to fight for the, quote, the small guy and woman, willing to stand up for the...
This guy just keeps talking. You ask him a question, maybe Stephen A. Smith is asleep.
Those who are poor and who are middle class and do so. And there are many politicians who are able to do that. So we can't give into cynicism. There was a quote from a black preacher and professor who was the mentor of Martin Luther King Jr., Howard Thurman.
Back to Martin Luther King Jr. again. So we're going to go back 56 years again, almost 60 years. This is who this guy has relied on. He has got nothing since 1968 to basically put his hat on.
And Howard Thurman said, never reduce your dreams to the event you are confronting right now. This event will not exhaust the infinite possibilities of your life or your political destiny. So even though it looks dreary now, we can't reduce our dreams to the dreariness. We've got to elevate ourselves. And remember this, if you think it's bad now, what was it like when Martin Luther King Jr. was alive, or Ralph Abernathy?
See, that's at least the fourth time he's referenced Martin Luther King. He doesn't want to talk about life today. He wants to talk about life 60 years ago. This guy's probably been a closet Marxist/commie for a long, long time, and he feels it slipping away.
Or Ella Baker, or Joanne Robinson, or Rosa Parks. These people had less and did more. So what we can't forget is that we possessed within us the ability and the resource to pull a rabbit out of the hat, to insist that there will be a ram in the bush, and to make certain, not by just praying and wishing and hoping, but by working as hard as we can help shape the very destiny about which we have fear or about which we have concern. We are the answers we are looking for, and we've got to do the...
I feel like I watched a stand-up comedy routine, that I walked into some nightclub in I would say Cuba, and listened to some of these guys do the spoken word thing as they profess their commie Marxist views. How sad was that? But there was a reason for that interview, and he kept mentioning it. It wasn't to convince black voters to abandon Donald Trump. That's already gone. It's a foregone conclusion. Those voters who have decided to go towards Trump. That interview was what I call a retention strategy. It's meant to be a tourniquet to stop the bleeding, to stop others from going to Trump. As many times as he mentioned Martin Luther King from 56 years ago, it was all out pandering to older black voters. And it was shameful pandering by Stephen A. Smith to even host that interview. He allowed this guy to come on his show and absolutely gaslight black Americans. This interview This one interview tells me so much more than any poll could ever tell me about black voter migration to Trump. The black voter shift is absolutely real. The black voter shift is absolutely massive. And the black voter shift is freaking them the hell out. This crazy interview confirms it 100% for me. A massive amount of black voters are moving to Donald Trump. As I've told you many, many times, Dementia Joe won the last election by 4 or 5 points. But in order to win, he had to garner 80 to 85% of the black vote. If he's lost 30% of the black vote, you do the math. It's a landslide in the making, and they know it. And that interview confirms it. And that's why Stephen A. Smith had to bend the knee and do that interview with that crackpot. Let me know what you think about the stuff that he said in that interview and where you think the black vote is going. Talk to you soon.